I know you'll all be gathered around the TV or the streaming device on Saturday watching the Texas Spring game because everybody gets the Longhorn Network, of course. No. So maybe the last time that you will all have to deal with the Longhorn Network for the Texas Spring game, of course, with the move to the SEC. But it is the Longhorns on the field against each other for the annual scrimmage. And we've got Matthew Miller here, who hosts our Texas Voice of College Football post-game shows. Matthew, how you doing today?
Good. It's spring. The weather's nice. Football's coming in. And thankfully, like you said, Mark, guess what? We will not be having to deal with the Longhorn Network much longer. We got a year left of this network, and then it's gone over to the SEC network, or at least you can find it on your most TV providers, hopefully.
Most TV providers, and they're not even providing it on TV this year, but it's on the connected streaming device that you can pick up. All right. Well, before we get to the festivities on Saturday, news came in on Wednesday concerning 3 transfers of Travell Johnson, Derek Brown, and also Brendan Thompson. As you said to me before we started to record, a bit of surprise there. Just your thoughts about the absences of these 3 and how that impacts the team.
Yeah, so some of these, they all were honestly a little bit surprising because if you look at the rooms, the linebacker room especially is probably the thinnest on the team. Like, we have good top-end starters there with Anthony Hill and Jalen Ford, but then you kind of go down the list, and there's not much there. You have Jet Bush, you have David Gabenda, and you have Maurice Blackwell, who is expected to start there alongside Hill and Ford. But after that, it's, like I said, very thin. So I'm kind of surprised those 2 guys decided to transfer. Derek Brown, especially, when he came out, or he came to Texas last year as a freshman, he was a big key and cog in that recruiting class. Like, he tried to get as many people as he could on board. He was out there recruiting for Texas as much as possible. So that one surprised me. And then Brendan Thompson, obviously a 4-star speed star out of Oklahoma, very good player, considered us and Oklahoma State were like the 2 finalists, chose us. And I understand this one. It's surprising in the fact that I thought he's going to be a very good player here at Texas, and I thought he would wait his turn. But this wide receiver room continues to be stacked, Mark. We just added A.D. Mitchell from Georgia. You have Xavier Worthy coming back. Jordan Whittington decided to come back. Isaiah Nayer coming back from injury. Casey Kane flashed somewhat last year. So, I mean, there's a lot to compete with, and he's also a track guy, and he's been doing that. So he really hasn't had that much time to do football, honestly. And I think he's getting passed up on the depth chart, and he decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to go. I don't know where he's going to go. It's going to be interesting to see. But go find somewhere that will give him a real shot to play. I think he's probably the 6th or 7th guy on the depth chart right now, honestly.
All right, we've got Matthew Miller here to break down the Texas Spring game and talk about the Longhorns' work in Austin over the last several weeks. So has there been anything that's come out that's really caught your eye or you think is meaningful before we even dive into what we could see on Saturday?
The most meaningful thing is Arch Manning seems to be the 3rd quarterback right now. I know there was a story about a month and a half ago that came out and said this guy, there's a competition, open competition. And that was even taken out of context because when Sark answer that question, he said every position has an open competition when they specifically asked about Ewers and Manning, and that got blown out of proportion, put on headlines everywhere. There's a competition at quarterback when there really wasn't. And Malik Murphy's the backup right now. Sark will tell you that. He's taken second team's reps at practice, and I fully expect that the one guy has a year in the system and is also tremendously talented. I think people are going to see that in the spring game. This guy is very good, Malik Murphy. And Arch Manning, I think, will be the 3rd string for most of the year, if not all the year. And we'll see what happens next year. Hopefully Quinn has a great season like we're anticipating as Texas fans, moves on to the NFL, and then we'll have Malik and Arch battle it out for next year.
So in terms of the spring game coming up this Saturday, what is on your plate in terms of what you're looking at first and foremost?
Okay, so the one room that I'm very interested in is the running back room. We lose Bijan Robinson, going to be a 1st-round pick for sure. Roshan Johnson, probably a 3rd, maybe 4th-round pick. Those 2 guys are very productive. Were some of our best football players, period, on the team last year. You have Cedric Baxter, a 5-star coming in from Florida. You have Jonathan Brooks, who I think, and I've said, I'll continue to say it, I think he's going to put up better numbers than Bijan Robinson. I don't think he's a better overall player, but he's behind a great offensive line now. And then you have Keelan Robinson and Jaden Blue. And it's going to be interesting who takes the forefront in that room and who gets the most carries. I don't know at this point. It would be between Jonathan Brooks and Cedric Baxter, and then Keelan and Jaden Blue would be fighting for carries. I think Keelan will catch more passes than he ends up toting the rock with, but we'll see about that. And I think I would not shock me, but if between Jaden and Keelan, one of them transfers after the spring, see what happens. But I think Cedric and Jonathan are going to be the two main guys, and I think Jonathan Brooks will probably get most of the carries early on. So just it's really difficult for freshman running backs to come in most of the time and make a gigantic impact. Bijan Robinson, if people don't remember that, came in and he didn't really play that much. That was mostly a Tom Herman thing, honestly, but he, I think, only carried the ball like 60 or 70 times his freshman year.
Talking up Texas with Matthew Miller, who heads up our Texas postgame show here on the Voice of College Football during the season. So, Matthew, I don't know if we had a chance to talk about this the last time we got together or not, but SEC coaches will convene on Destin, Florida, as they typically do at the end of May each year. And while it's not their decision to make, there's been a back and forth between the conference and the individual athletic programs concerning permanent opponents. And with Texas going into the SEC, where do you think that will land in terms of the Longhorns playing three permanent opponents? Most likely that's going to be the number each season.
Yeah, so Oklahoma, obviously, that's one. That's penciled in. So you're basically asking the other two. I mean, if Texas fans were asked this, I think most would probably say it's going to be Arkansas and A&M. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Mark, but those are our old classic rivals. You kind of renew rivalries. I think that makes the most sense also geographically. In some aspects, even though I don't think that means anything anymore. My God, we're going to have USC and UCLA coming from California to play Ohio State and Michigan. So I don't think that means anything anymore. But yeah, you renew rivalries, old rivalries, and I think that's the most important thing. And I just feel like that's a thing that's going to happen. It's been put out there into the ether for a long time. And as a Texas fan, that makes me excited. If those are our permanent teams that we get to play every year, I mean, Oklahoma right now doesn't scare me. A&M definitely doesn't scare me. I think they're a year away from being a complete dumpster fire. And then Arkansas, I think, is under Pittman's going to be perennially 8-4 type team. So they're a good football team, but I think that's one of those where if we get back to where we should be, and I think where our roster is right now, we should handle them semi easily. But we'll see.
Yeah, I posted a video. I gave my recommendations, and those were the three for Texas. I thought that they were one of the more clear-cut situations in the conference, looking at the current situation and, of course, what was broken up just 10 or 12 years ago with Texas A&M, and then, of course, that old Southwest Conference tie with Arkansas.
Do you think there's
Matthew
any
Miller,
chance-
the Voice of College Football Texas host, is there anything that we missed in regards to recruiting? The transfer portal, you hit on that, the spring game coming up on Saturday, or anything else that we need to hit on?
So far, no. It's actually been a pretty quiet off season. Just going back to the transfer portal thing, I think people, Texas fans especially, Sark was on a couple podcasts last month, the Pivot podcast and also Bussin' with the Boys podcast, and he basically talked about Texas football. And he said about like I said, the transfer portal. If you go in at Texas, this has already been established. Like, if you decide to put your name in, you can't come back. Like, some schools allow them to come back, like test the waters, come back. So that's not going to happen with those three guys. So I think they're permanently gone. I think that's also why I've noticed ever since Steve Sarkisian's been there, we haven't had that many people transfer, honestly. Like, if they put their name in, they are gone, but we haven't had that many people transfer out after the last 2 years, especially. Obviously, when a new coaching staff comes in, you're going to see a mass exodus of some sorts. So that's going to be interesting. And also, Mark, when you were talking about the three permanent opponents, well, who else could you see? Would it be Missouri, maybe?
Yeah, so anybody who attempts to do this, people will do this in isolation. The Georgia fan base will just look at there's three and say, we need to have A, B, and C. Obviously, it's a complete puzzle. So the other puzzle pieces need to fit for the entire conference. So I don't know that that's going to get in Texas's way. I don't believe so based on what I put together. I put the entire conference together and I thought it made sense. I thought everything that I put together really made sense across the board, except for like one oddity out there. And I didn't think it was that big a deal, but yeah, Missouri, I cannot recall. I think I had them with Arkansas, Texas A&M, and somebody else I don't recall, maybe Kentucky or South Carolina. So I did not have that connection, and I don't necessarily think that that's, other than them playing in the same conference at one point, that and geographically that makes some level of sense to a small extent. But yeah, I really don't think that there's anything else out there. I think there are enough opponents for LSU. I think that that would be a kind of a cool series. But the good thing about it is that it's not as crucial as what the conferences did years ago, specifically in the ACC and the SEC, where if you did not get tagged as a permanent opponent, then we'll see in 7 years.
Yeah.
So it's that was a big decision. This is still an important decision that has to be taken seriously, but the way they're going to divide the rest of the conference within every other uh, uh, schedule rotation, if you don't get tagged with a particular team, well, you're still going to see them every other year.
Yeah, for sure. And it's going to be interesting if A&M decides to throw a fit about that. I don't know, because they kind of threw a fit about us coming in. I don't know if people remember their athletic director kind of complaining at SEC Media Day. So I don't know if they'd get their way on this one. And if they did, that would be interesting, because then you would have to slot someone in there. I think Missouri probably makes the most sense out of all the teams, but who knows? I don't know if they have that much power there. They shouldn't, honestly. They aren't good enough for that, in my opinion, and their brand isn't big enough, but we'll see.
Yeah, I really don't think anybody in a particular conference should wield that kind of power. Not when you've got 15 other schools, especially the caliber of about half of them. And at the same time, again, it's not like they're really avoiding Texas that much by doing that. They're still going to see them every other year.
Yeah.
All right, Matthew, appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, no problem, Mark.